Hey guys, it's Cunning Fox, another Nerd This video. Today we are going to go over the human faction for the ability rankings sheet. So this is a part of a series, so I'm not going to do a big in-depth. I will do one or two examples at the beginning where I go pretty in-depth just to explain the concept for those of you who kind of may only be looking at one of these. This will be linked in the description. So definitely if you just want to check it out, take a look, and you just want to take my word for it, fine. If you want to kind of hear why I did some of these rankings, or if you're kind of like, I don't know if I agree with him on this particular ranking, you can hear my explanation why. And you know what? This is just advice. If you got something that you feel like you really want to do, then go for it. That's what these games are about. But just for the people who are really trying to economically spend their scrolls, here are my recommendations. So first up, alphabetically, we have Cruel. So, Cruel and her little freaking cleavage bat. Alright, so going into these little in depth, so we have a 4-3-2-3-3. And for those, that's saying the value of the upgrade to level 2 of this ability is worth a 4 out of 5. So it's a 5-point scale. It's a 3, 2, 3. So it kind of goes down in value, and then it kind of goes back up again. Let's see why, right? So initially, there's not great damage scaling initially, but we do get a little more health regen if she's attacking a demon. Since demons are pretty prevalent in the arena, that's not nothing. And eventually it will help heal her reflections as well. So, the damage, extra health regen, that's fine, that's fine. A little better damage scaling. Better damage scaling, and it heals summon reflections. I don't know how frequently this super duper helps me, but she does do some solid. Honestly, the best part of this is the damage it does. I wouldn't really consider the healing being done being too significant, but it can be very situationally. I just find that this is not an ability that usually determines the outcome of a match, and so that's why I don't rate it as high there. So next, we have the ability 2, which is a 3-3-2-5-4. So we have a big jump here at 5 and some significant value here at 6. So let's find out why. So initially, it's kind of just doing some more damage. Calls the reflection to assist if there's one alive. That's not bad. If you're like cloning Soleus right off the bat in arena, or sorry, in tower, if you're like cloning the enemy Soleus, and then you use the invis on the tank at the very beginning, hey, you're gonna get a couple extra hits in there. That's not nothing. Solid damage, but if you don't have this, you don't have this ability. Really, not really. So the value of this is getting rid of that invisibility for one turn. Now this is great because it actually gets rid of the taunt itself, but this is still good, not just because of the damage, the additional damage that you get, because remember, this is generally going to be applied against defenders. They're going to mitigate most of that damage, whereas her basic's going to be used primarily against DPS and such. So it'll probably actually translate doing more damage whenever the other one's being used, but this allows the ability to last for 2 turns if you have someone like Kyra on the other team, or Wonder Lulu, who's provided 2 turns of invisibility, so that coincides with that, and you're always able to attack those DPS tacticians, etc. So that's why that one's ranked that way. Going the ability 3, good value early on, not a lot until later. So what's that about, right? Now this does not mean that this ability is bad. This ability is a part of the core of who Cruel is. But the improvements don't give us a ton. If you look at the beginning, it's 40% health and shields, 40% damage, 75% speed, and eventually we get to 70% damage and health. And yeah, that's almost doubling it. That's not nothing, but that's what you get for all that scroll investment. So it's not as big of a deal. Now, most of the value is not in the damage. Usually you're not going to be getting damage minions. You're usually going to be getting support minions, support reflections, because that's just the best way. Because they have reduced health and damage, you want to more like get Shadars, who are giving turn meter boost to everyone. Getting Soleuses, they give buffs and some healing, because he gives so much healing that even though he has mitigated damage / healing power, he's still going to do what you need. So where the health and shields are a little more valuable because they increase the survivability, because the damage doesn't give us as much. And just because the scaling is flat until you get both here, that's kind of why the value is what it is. This is pretty bad because all it does give us 10% additional damage. In most circumstances, not tower, she's not going to have this till pretty late along anyway. Yeah. the ability is good. The upgrades are not as valuable. So this literally, if you look just like early on, it's like basically utterly and completely devoid of value until you get to 6. Why is that? Because initially, hey, you know what? Healer's getting cheat death. Like if you steal a Soleus and you're running it with like a Chi lead and a Soleus of your own, well, now you've got 3 healers. There's a cheat death. That's a tower climbing team. That's not nothing. Giving some cheat deaths is not nothing. It's super cheap. It's you know, however, if these 7, 8 scrolls, 8 green scrolls, you can eat that. But here until here, unless there's a weird tournament, you don't get any of these ever. Not worth doing. Literally past this, and again, that's basically one niche use for tower climbing. There is no point in putting any scrolls in this until you get all the way, but getting all the way is huge because this is one of the 3, basically, you know, she has 3 core things that she does. It's like, that's all her abilities. I know, but like they're so influential as to what she does. If you take away any of the 3 things, summoning a reflection, giving invisibility to mages, reflecting invisibility, I don't remember what I said the first time, but whichever one, so core to using her as a character. So now that you kind of get what I'm going through, this is maybe the first video of this type that you're seeing. I'm going to go a little more quickly through these other ones. I am going to reference this, but I'm mostly just going to reference it and then go to that page. So next up, alphabetically, is arguably the least valuable character this entire game, Darian. It's because, for a few reasons. One, he's a leader, but he's a leader in a faction with arguably the best leadership in the entire game of Soleus, if I consider all areas of the game. Zera is specifically in like arena and tournaments, but Soleus provides so much in longer term things like raids. And he has more synergy with different factions, blah, blah, blah. Why do we care if this crappy damage character does more damage? He's not even going to use this until his 3rd turn anyway. Boo. This is very bad. This is literally just terrible. This gets a little more early on because it's just so cheap. He's going to use this, and he's going to do really crappy AoE damage, and with a 50% chance to apply armor increase to 3 allies for 2 turns. These are devoid of value unless you're doing it here or beyond. There's no point, and you should not do that. You should not do that. This very early on when you are climbing in campaign as a new character, this is worth putting in, because it will give him an armor decrease. It's only 7 green scrolls, and you're going to be able to reduce a significant amount of the armor, of the damage that would be coming in. That's fine. This is not the worst thing in the world. Like, you could get a little debuff early on that's inconvenient. After this, it's just, my gosh, are you really going to put 16 blue scrolls, 24, 32 into freaking Darian? No. Flat stacking physical armor. So again, initially you can make a little argument for doing it very early on. No. Just no. You're not going to use Darian. You're not going to use him. You have a little baddie. Why would you do that? Again, worse leadership. Gives more armor. Fine. Additional members of the Order of Chance to remove one. That's like a very kind of like, oh, that could be kind of fun, but it's just so inferior to other options. You're not going to use Darian. Don't put crap into it. He is our red character for this video. Next, we have Eric Shieldbreaker. Now, Eric Shieldbreaker is one of those other ones where a lot of the value is later on. May not be as worth boosting initially. You do have a couple funky ones here. So why is that, right? Going to his first ability, not great damage scaling. And by that, I mean it's basically flat. Until the end, you get a little bit more, but that means just lower ROI, return on investment, right? Because he is overall so good. If he wasn't so good overall, he may not even get these rankings. But I mean, that's a lot. Scrolls to ask for what you did for this really early on. No. A lot of great. Now this damage does scale pretty. Not by stacking, I meant scaling when I said that just a second ago. The damage scaling really solid here. Eventually giving the damage increase. He's usually, situationally, you may use this on turn 1, or you may use it after his A3, which we'll get to in a second. But giving this additional damage increase, if you go with his A3 first, then this, you're giving yourself 2 basics with that increased damage, and that's not nothing because he's a pretty strong character for physical damage, as we'll see in his passive as well. So here, right, we got minor value early on, but really it's later. What's going on with that? Well, initially this is only available on turn 2. A lot of stuff has already come out by then that you would be trying to prevent getting debuff immunity, but you know, it's not, again, not devoid of value. You can use it for things like Dragon early on, Arachar's raid, but really it's whenever you get to here that we really start to see it, because you get it turn 1. And since he is usually going to be the slowest character in your party, that means that your characters are going to usually get a turn of debuff immunity and armor increase, as long as they are slower than the opponent who would be applying it. The problem with it only lasting 1 turn is if it works for 1 turn, he gives it to someone, and then they have their turn before any of the enemies go. It's kind of wasted. This is it's pretty much essential. I might even drop this. I might even drop this to a 4. I don't know. It's hard. In fact, I think I will probably actually come back and edit these. This is like a third look over for me as I do this as well. But really, you kind of got to get it all the way there. Here I give it an increased value because you get the armor increase. But again, if you're putting these on characters that are faster than the enemies that you're facing, it's going to wipe off before that anyway. So really you do kind of need to take it all the way, but you do get continuous, like you get additional values that goes on. So next, physical damage, it's flat. So initially we're going to see a lot more value early on, but here if you are running them in big human comps, that does stack pretty crazy, because now it's going to be, if you're running all humans, including him, right, that's 55% increased physical damage. It's pretty bonkers. So you kind of, again, you have like good, and here. So I'll be changing these. I won't do it here because it won't take effect, 'cause it's actually a offline Excel doc. But on the Google Drive sheet, I'll be adjusting that. Freezard. Freezard. Going in. So as we saw, we kind of have like a lot of late value other than his passive is the gist of it. So breaking that down, it's because initially we don't get that increased chance to slow. We get solid damage. It scales a little bit, not as well as some other things. Better than Eric's basic. But that increased chance to slow, that's really what we're after there for raid purposes and for like counters. It really deters people from trying to attack him, because if you run him under a Solis League, if he counters back and gives that speed decrease, oh, it's like not even worth it. Initially, again, not crazy damage. It's only applying to 3 enemies, so we would want something a little more for a 3 enemy AoE for damage scaling, but the value is in the armor decrease. It's all these things synergize so well for raid, because you get the speed decrease, which is huge. You get the armor decrease, which is huge. You get the turn meter reduction, which is huge. So if this wasn't a part of that overall kit, it would probably get a little lower rankings, but overall, definitely good. The armor decrease lasting an additional turn is huge for the same reason as I was talking about the debuff immunity lasting the turn longer on Eric. Going to the turn meter reduction, we do not see crazy damage from this early on. Pretty weak sauce. But eventually we get to these points where we get 10% chance to decrease turn meter and significant decrease, 20%, 25, to the point where we're getting 75. Worth doing all the way. Earlier on, it's damage, it's AoE damage, that's fine. But if you look at what you gain in the last 3, it's at 135 here, and then you get an additional 85. So you get more than 50% of the boost, including the base damage of it from the last 3. And then here it's flat. That's why. So whenever he gets knocked out, he recovers with some. He actually revives with some health. It's flat. So good value early on, but not towards the end. That doesn't mean it's a terrible idea if you're using him in arena and you just feel like doing it after you're kind of comfortable with your scrolls. I have him at max out on mine now, as you can see, but initially not worth doing as you are leveling and building up your stockpile. Looking at Little Baddie, kind of a awkward situation where like you have some value in the basic that's good, but a few ones here. Few ones floating around, so let's get into that. We have, now this is the basic that allows to do some really significant turn meter reduction. You get some stuff early on, but really just looking at that 20% chance to decrease turn meter, and you increase the amount that it's reducing it, you over double it. So that's a pretty big jump. It's arguably more valuable than all other increases. Or all other upgrades to that ability, so it's a really great upgrade. Now up here, the problem is that it's a turn 3 taunt. If you guys remember having Tromgar early on, it's really inconvenient. You kind of have to use Rantha to stall along, or maybe you use a Kyra to invis and give him taunt earlier until you're able to get it to first turn. Where you get it on first turn is level 5. You do get a reduction on level 3, which is why there's some addition, kind of like sustained value there, or sorry, with an increased value there at 5, and then at 5 here because you get it on turn 1, which is huge. Some additional damage for a tank, we don't really care. That's not doing much for us. Here, not great damage scaling. It is an AoE, but still not great damage scaling. But we do get the 30% chance to inflict blindness, which is useful for against Hard Orc and Soleus in the raid. It's cozy. Now here, the same thing as Freezard, except he gets shield back, or she gets shield back, and it's flat. So better value early on, less value later on. Going to Robin Bad. So Robin Bad, kind of a lot more like yellow situations. There's not a ton of really significant things, but we can see his A1 and his A3 get a lot of value at the end, so let's check that out. Going over to Robin Bad. Solid damage percentage. It's not even like this scaling so much as it starts off pretty solid. And because he has, we're going to see later in his kit, he has that chance to counterattack. By the way, don't pay attention to these runes. As he's someone I don't have developed very much. Pretty much just throw a bunch of health runes with reasonable speed secondaries on characters that I use when I have to use them for tournaments. But eventually you get this turn meter reduction on a critical hit, and because critical hit is a part of, or crit chance is a part of his kit, that is not nothing. That makes him potentially very useful in raids. Here we get the chance to get a crit chance increase, right? So 40% chance for him to gain it for 2 turns, which is going to do a lot to boost up his ability. But it, kind of damage scaling, again, very, very marginal, which is why he doesn't get crazy value on it. It's fine because it synergizes well with his kit, but the numbers just aren't that high. Giving this buff, kind of like when we were talking about with Eric and like Sharp, if you watched the Elf video, he doesn't get to use this until turn 2, but giving crit damage increase to everyone and giving damage increase to himself and the turn meter boost. So it's kind of like a reverse version of, or an inversion of Master Duo, where instead of giving like survival related things, it's like damage related things and turn meter. So that's how we get in there. And then here's the main thing. If it were possible to counterattack someone who actually had turn meter left, this would be so much more valuable, but it's not. His main thing about his basic is it does solid damage, but it reduces turn meter. Well, if I'm attacking you, I now have an empty turn meter bar because I just did my turn. So it doesn't effectively reduce anything. If it was more of like an assist chance, now we're really talking with him. But it's not nothing. And because this will stack with a Soleus lead, if you're running him with that, if you're running him with all humans, right? 50% chance plus the additional chance for each human from Soleus, he's going to be countering all the time. That's pretty crazy. Literally, every single time, you will have a 100% chance to counterattack enemies. I'm not 100% sure if this stacks with that, or if it's 2 independent 50% chances. I would think it's not. I would think it's summed. But anyway, so moving on, we just went over Ramabad. Selena, one of the new additions going in. So Selena is one of those characters you might even see in my notes here for raids. That first ability is potentially going to be really significant for raids. For those of you who remember using TIE Fighter Pilot whenever he was released in Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, getting the tenacity. Now, this tenacity decrease is not as significant in this game. That's also because there's not a guaranteed chance to, resist or apply in this game. So it's just kind of all mellowed out a little bit, which I actually like better. That's just me personally, but reducing that tenacity for everybody is going to help everyone be able to apply those. Because it's hard to get some characters fast enough and with high enough potency to do what you want to do, but you add her in there and you lower that potency bar that everyone needs a little bit. So healing, single target healing, extra percent of maximum health. This pales in comparison. Like an extra 20% of her health. Let's say that she has 20k, right? Another 4,000 healing on top of. It's like, okay, you know what your AOE does? Freaking 400%. What is even the point? This is just another heal. Just read this as another heal that only heals one person. Applies 2 random opposite buffs for the same duration. This is potentially helpful against Zera comps, but Selena's not super fast, so she's not going to get out of a bunch of people. And so basically what this does is this just balances things out. If you have an armor decrease, now you get an armor increase. It only lasts for the same duration, so it sticks the whole time. It's not nothing, but it's mostly just about the healing. Oops, take the wrong thing. And then here, this chance. So so for reference, this video is taking place before the Fountain event is released. She is present in it, and actually one of the ways in which I beat one of the levels is actually using RNG, right, to manipulate this passive. This passive is actually hit or miss, because if taunt exists, it can be applied on one of your DPS. If taunt is out there, if it's like the only buff out there, she's applying taunt on somebody, and odds are it's not going to be someone that you want it on. So this is a really hit or miss one to me. It really depends on the compositions that you're seeing. Even then, yeah. So that's why this is kind of like question mark. I don't know. We'll always have to see. It's totally situation dependent. Moving over to Snorri. We only got 2 left. Hang in there, you cool cats and kittens. All right, so again, you can see initially with Snorri that we get some really jank value here. It's because it's flat increases, so we'll get into that. But good, kind of like mid-tier value. Not much value in maxing out his abilities, though, relative to a lot of other characters. So getting the accuracy increase, that's fine. Basically means things aren't going to be dodging you unless they have a dodge buff or passive or leadership that's affecting things. But hypothetically, that's supposed to be a pretty rare thing, right? He does do some decent damage. It just has more value if you're using him in a Soleus comp because of all the counterattacks you'll get. But he is pretty much a bleed machine. That is his main value. Pretty much anything that isn't maxing it. Like most of the time, I'm using him in like Gear 11 situations. His damage is basically nothing. He's all about setting up Revel. So we want to get that 100% chance to apply the bleeding, and it's not nothing, but we really don't care after that. Here, the main things you get are some additional crit chance, which again, that gives us some solid extra damage. We'll almost, triple the damage we're putting out. Even if it isn't that great, that's still something. Removing debuffs, but it's mostly about just getting the speed. So here you don't get it. There is value to going all the way, but you have to go through this upgrade that's not as valuable. So definitely to level 4 though was an obvious because of the increases to speed that he gets while in that state. He gives this to himself and Freezard, so there is some additional value if you have both of them together, but it doesn't happen that often, and it is flat. So we see better value early on, worse value at the end. We have finally arrived, ladies and gents, to the patriarch of the human faction. A couple odd ones thrown out there. We're going to get into that, but a lot of really good value for him overall. Initially, that's crap. That's a really low percentage. He eventually gets the chance to restore a turn to a random ability. That can be helpful, but it's 15% chance, so it's really RNG dependent. And again, in the note, ability 1 is great because it calls Nightiel, but the score is for the value of the upgrade. That's what we're assessing here. Now here, I remember they even nerfed this. I don't know if y'all remember. They nerfed these percentages, and this is still where they're at. Crazy, crazy, crazy AoE healing. On a 3-turn cooldown. Give me some of that. Now here's where we kind of get some funkiness. To me, the only change is going from healing 30% of health to 40% of health. When I'm using this on the first turn, I ain't healing anybody. That ain't doing jack for me. It's not until the second time I'm using this where I'm usually getting any value from that healing. So for me, it's not really worth it. Giving out these additional benefits are great. Haste is definitely the most valuable one of them. Damage increase works well with that haste bit. Cheat Death and Tenacity Increase kind of synergize well if you want to throw it on a tank. But even then, this is like, I want to make sure this DPS lives, because you also get the armor increase, right? So there's kind of two ways of doing it. Do I want to run a DPS out there sooner, or a support, in order to get them to outspeed like their mirror on the other side? Or do I want to put this on a tank to help them be more resilient for a bunch of damage I know is about to come their way? Couple great uses there, but not a lot of value in maxing it. This is my account where I have 1,200 blue scrolls and I am not upgrading it. It's not worth doing. I have a lot of stuff I still have to do on my account, otherwise I would. But so here's the value on this one. Getting the cheat death, awesome. Getting potency, awesome. Getting armor increase, awesome. Makes it such a pain whenever you want to get rid of 90L, but it's like, but she's the armor increase. Maybe it's just better going after someone else. Cheat death, making it last one more turn. These are all good. Potency increase, like, it's basically good for Freezard's third turn. That's kind of the main time this is gonna really be relevant. And like 90L's dispels, it's just not worth, again, like 36 blue scrolls to most people. The leadership. So initially, this was actually a little funkier because running him with a bunch of elves didn't make sense. He is actually a really good elf leader. With the elves that we have right now, he may even be superior to Thaun. We'll see if there are some adjustments made. This video is made pre-Thaun release. But giving that additional crit chance to allied elves, huge. Very, very useful. Potency to pandas, come on. Physical damage, more potency to pandas. We don't like that. We don't like more potency to pandas. And it gives us the same physical and magic damage we were getting before. More crit chance. Again, it's per each living elf. So that's not, if you're running with 4, that's not 2, that's 8, right? And then again, the counter attack chance. Oh, I did a dump. That would have been 75% on Robin Bad. I'm doing silliness, y'all. Anywho, you have survived through yet another extended video. Thank you for those who did see the value and kind of like going through all of it. I'm not offended by anyone else who didn't, though. Hope you're having a good one. I'll see you next time.